What's the most important factor when it comes to growing your own food year-round? In this video, we're going to explore that question, and I can guarantee you the answer is not what you'd expect. So is buying the best seeds the most important way to maximise your productivity in the garden? Well, having good seeds is really important, particularly fresh seeds. Seeds after a couple of years start to degrade a little bit, and that can affect how much they germinate. Most seed packets have a packed date on them, and ideally you only want to use seeds from the previous year or possibly the year before. Some crops like lettuce and parsnips really need very fresh seeds. Their seeds tend to go off pretty quickly, but some seeds will last a few more years, but obviously that depends on your ability to germinate the seeds in the first place. You can help that problem by sowing your seeds in cellular trays, or better still, in a germinating seed tray. Basically, you sow a lot of seeds, and then the very best ones you prick out and you put into your cellular tray or out into the garden. And that way you're guaranteeing that you're taking the strongest seeds, and you're not being left with bare patches in your veg beds outside where seeds that you've sown directly haven't worked. So that's a great way of maximising the benefits of seeds, particularly if they are a little bit older. Another way to look after your seeds is to keep them in the fridge. You want to keep them dry, and so you need to keep them in some sort of a sealed container, but by keeping seeds cooler and in the fridge, they tend to last a lot longer. There is a school of thought that suggests that actually taking them from the cold and then sowing them straight away actually stimulates germination and can improve germination rates. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I certainly find that my seeds last a lot longer, and if I buy them 1 year, I'm probably going to use half in the first year and then maybe half in the second year, depending on what the crop is. So keeping them in the fridge is a great idea. If, like me, you're an organic gardener, then it's really important that you also buy organic seeds. There are several companies in this country and in the US that provide organic certified seeds, and that means that the process of producing the plants that the seeds came from was totally organic. There were no chemicals used, no fertilizers or anything like that, and it means that the seeds themselves can go on and produce totally organic plants. So it just means that the whole process from seed production right through to harvest, you can say, is completely organic. So look online and find yourself a good supplier. Here in the UK, I use Vital Seeds and the Organic Gardening catalogue, and between the two of those, I can usually get pretty much everything that I need. The other thing you can do to maximise the quality of your seeds is to save seeds from existing crops. If you choose the very best plants in a particular season and let them grow on and go to seed, you can then collect that seed, and then the next season you know that you've got really good quality seeds. So that's a great way to do it. You can't do it with F1 hybrid seeds, as they're called, because the offspring seeds won't be the same crop or quality of crop as the parent. So you can only do it with heirloom or standard seeds rather than hybrids. But anyway, saving seeds is a nice thing to do. It saves you money, you can give them away as gifts, and you can swap them with other gardeners. So seeds are important, but they're not the most important thing. Okay, so is it the soil or the compost that we grow in that actually makes all the difference when we're trying to have an abundant harvest? Well, having good rich soil is certainly an advantage, but in actual fact, some crops like potatoes and beans will grow in pretty poor soil. Most crops basically need well-draining soil. That's the most important thing. Clay soils, for example, can struggle with that a little bit, and so you can mix in organic matter like compost into the soil, and that will certainly improve drainage. You don't even need soil to grow. You can actually use compost. That's what this is. This is actually 100% compost, and you can grow in that. You can grow in grow bags, you can grow in compost in pots. There's all sorts of different ways that you can grow. One thing to bear in mind with compost, particularly if we're using it in seed trays as we saw earlier, is to use the right type of compost. Seed compost is a specific type that has a lower level of nutrients, and that helps the germination process. So it's really important to use that at that stage. Once the seeds are germinated and the seedlings have started to grow, you can move them on into larger trays or into pots if need be and use a general purpose compost. If you are going to use compost, then it's really important to try and use organic compost if you can find it. And by that I mean certified organic. All composts are described as organic, and often they say that on the packaging, but it's certified organic means that they've had no chemicals involved with their production. So it's really important to try and find that if you can. Obviously, peat-free is the way to go. In the UK, legislation is now being brought in to make all composts peat-free, but even if that's not the case for you, it's really important to try and source peat-free compost. That's the most sustainable option. So the medium that you grow your crops in, the soil or the compost, the quality of that certainly makes a difference, but that's not the most important thing either. Okay, before we go any further, if you've enjoyed this content so far, please hit the like button. It makes a really big difference to us as a small channel. It tells YouTube we're on the right track. And if you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button and then you can catch our future content. Alright, thank you very much. Let's keep going. So what about watering? Does when we water or how we water make all the difference? Well, it probably doesn't make that much difference when you water your crops. I mean, realistically, it can rain at any time of day or night, and obviously plants thrive in nature as it is, so it's probably not that important. But there are several schools of thought about whether you should water first thing in the morning or in the evening. The issue is most relevant in the summertime when there's so much summer heat. Obviously, plants can suffer from heat stress. So in that situation, personally I like to water in the mornings. That means that the plants build up reserves of moisture before the heat of the day. You don't need to worry about wilting. That's a natural reaction of plants. They remove the moisture from their leaves, take it into their roots, and then at the end of the day, when the sun's gone away, the leaves will build back up again. So wilting isn't something that you need to worry about, but you do want to keep your soil moist as much as you can. You don't want to overwater, and so you always need to check. You can either check with your finger or you can use a moisture meter. You just check near where the plant's roots are and you can tell whether or not they need moisture. If you overwater, you can end up rotting the roots of plants. Some crops need hardly any watering at all. Potatoes, carrots, unless there's sort of several weeks of drought, you don't really need to water them that much. Other plants, particularly in the height of summer, leafy greens, for example, salad plants, I'm watering them every single day, and then sometimes even twice a day if it's a really, really hot day. It just depends on whether there's been rain at any point recently and whether your soil is really starting to dry out. The key is keep an eye on all the plants and try and keep your soil just moist. To be water efficient and to reduce the amount of water that you use generally, because particularly if you have a lot of veg beds, then it can be quite a lot of water that you're using, and obviously that increases the cost of your production. You should try and water at the roots of plants. You can use a lot less water if you water at the roots of the plants, because that's specifically where they want it. You can also use a drip feed system, and you can put that on a timer. I have a sort of system that comes on for 20 minutes every morning, and that drips down next to the roots of all the different plants, and is a really efficient way of watering. So of course watering is important, but I find you don't need to be that regimented about it. Okay, so if buying the best seeds, having the best soil, or how you water aren't the most important things to have the successful harvest through the year, then what is? Well, in my experience, it's being organised and keeping good records. Bear with me. So when you first start growing, you can sort of throw a few carrot seeds in the ground, you can grow a few potatoes, some lettuce, and you realise it's pretty easy. When you only have a few crops, that's not such a big deal. But when you want to be a bit more self-sufficient growing your own food, you have to grow a lot more crops. Now, last year, for example, we grew 50 different varieties of crops through the year. So to keep organised as far as that amount of growing is concerned is difficult. Every crop has its own idiosyncrasies, the way it likes to be watered, when you should sow the seeds, when it needs to be harvested. And so the best way to keep on top of all of that and keep really, really organized is by having a chart that you basically map each crop. Now, I've got 3 different templates here that I use every year to help in the process of being organized. And I've put a link to these blank templates down in the description of the video, so you're welcome to download those for free, and hopefully they'll be really helpful for you as well. Basically, the idea is that each crop has its own line in the chart, and then I have 2 different charts, a chart for the first 6 months of the year and a chart for the second 6 months of the year. Each month is separated into 4 sections, into quarters, and then I use a system of symbols to tell me what I need to do for each crop at a particular time of the year. So whether that's sowing in the greenhouse, planting under fleece, whether I need to cut back some crops or to pot on tomatoes, for example, at what periods of the year I can harvest that crop. And so what it allows me to do is, as time goes on, for each quarter of the month, I just look down that column on each of the pages for each of the crops that I have, and I know exactly what I need to do for all the different crops at that point of year. It also helps with succession planting, because to do that effectively, you need to be sowing and planting concurrently, so you need to have an overlap of your crops so that you've always got, for example, lettuce coming out of the ground. If you use this system, it means that you've always organized when it is you're going to do each of those stages, and you don't have to remember, you don't have to think about what you need to be doing at any point of the year. So it really helps to organize and to tell you all the different tasks that you have and that you need to do at any particular time. One of the key advantages of this also is the fact that as you learn and you get better and you get used to particular crops, you'll adjust how it is you grow them. And as long as you do this in pencil, you can rub it out, and then you can adjust the dates at which. So, for example, I often find that I need to sow seeds earlier than I think I do, because it takes the seedlings a while to grow. So I can adjust that, I can move that forward, and then next year, obviously, I can do it slightly differently. One of the difficult things about gardening is it's not like learning an instrument where you can just keep practicing every day. For each crop, some crops you do several times a year, but for a lot of crops you only do them once a year. And often all the things that you've learnt in this particular season, by the time next season comes around, you've forgotten. So using a system like this, as far as time is concerned, can really help you to maintain that knowledge. The other thing I have, and again this template's in the pack that you can download for free, is a crop sheet. So this is basically notes about each particular crop. So I have a sheet for each crop that I use. This one's beetroot. And I basically just write notes about sowing, planting, whether it needs to be under cover, how much I need to water it, the spacings of the plants, all the key things, so that next year when I come to do it again, I remember what worked for me. And as time goes on, I add notes to this, I change things, and it's basically building up my bank of knowledge without it all having to be here, because I don't know about you, but I find it difficult to remember anything. So this is a great way of you building up your knowledge, particularly specific to your own garden. So that's really useful. The last thing I do is I have a variety review sheet. Again, there's a template for you. The idea behind this is that it's really good to try different varieties of crops, but over the course of several years, again, it's hard to remember what worked and what didn't. So I do these sheets once a year. The other sheets tend to keep them over multiple years, but this sheet I do once a year. I write down the crop that I've decided to grow, the specific variety I grow and where I got it from, and then I just take some notes. Did I like it? Was the vegetable tasty? Did it not grow particularly well in our environment? And so then I can make a decision next year when it comes to January whether I'm going to use that crop again or whether I need to buy the seeds. So there we go. There's 3 really useful templates. I use them all the time, and it allows me to grow my knowledge and become a better gardener. Obviously, we've talked about growing throughout the year, and being this organised allows you to do that. One of the ways that you can grow through the year is by having a polytunnel, or a high tunnel as they're called. That allows you to extend the season, but it also allows you to grow some salad crops right through the year. And so if you check out this video, that basically covers how we transitioned from summer to winter this year in our polytunnel.